The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Sky. All the football you love in one place. Across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then.
What about your start to the game? It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Oh!
You're welcome along to Thursday's Football Show. Nathan with you this evening. Dan McDonnell live in studio on a Thursday.
It's a novelty, Nathan, isn't it?
You literally are unwell. The only reason you'd...
I've been a bit under the weather this week, but I'm coming back out of hibernation to come and talk to you today. Watched a lot of football. It's the one thing about
glorious.
But I'm not going into a dadcast tangent here, but you don't get to
people love that.
You don't get to watch as much. But then if you're under the weather for a couple of days and you're left alone, it wasn't the worst weekend in the world.
It was the best weekend. Where suddenly
the Championship, League One
was one of the great Mondays of football.
League One was Sunday, then you had League Two and Championship on Monday, overlapping with and then going into the three games on Monday.
The final day of the Championship season should be a bank holiday
every year. Yeah,
because the playoff final was generally always played on a bank holiday Monday, and in the UK, but not in Ireland. And it was one of the great days of arriving home from school, and unexpectedly, you turn on the TV, and there it would be a live game of football at 3:00 on a Monday. Always glorious.
Who'd be scoring goals? Someone like David Hopkin or Clive Mendonca. They definitely be involved.
Paul Pesky-Salido.
They should definitely be in the mix. Yeah.
Band's friend.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I hadn't thought about Paul Pesky-Salido for years.
Someone swerving off a road in Canada at the moment.
Well, I just remember we never fully covered that with Kilban, did we? Or maybe we did at the time.
I'm not sure. I discussed it with him in Qatar.
Oh, did you? You can give us the full insight. Because I do remember, obviously, the only Canadian footballer I knew forever. And when Kev was moving to Canada, I was like, well, don't be taking Paul Pesky-Salido's gig while you're over there. Then it turned out.
Little did you know.
It turned out he pissed off the one Canadian you shouldn't piss off.
And was it on Craig Forrest, was it, or something? But that was they all went a bit native on that. But but it was those Championship Mondays. But it was, although I must say that the Championship this year was building up to be epic. And then the relegation situation there was a lot going on. That was all resolved before the last day, which was a little bit disappointing. But still, the playoffs race gave us something.
The Championship playoff.
The Millwall Blackburn game and all of that. It was not great from an Irish point of view, maybe some of the outcomes, but the drama of Millwall being 3-1 up. The minute the commentator, and you've been there, the old commentator's curse, I think the commentator at 3-1 in the Millwall game pretty much said something, it's impossible to see it, losing it from here, and at the Den, and you probably, you imagine, it's a horrible place to go to be 3-1 up, for Blackburn. Then all of a sudden looked like they had something to play for, and they didn't. And they still come back and beat them anyway. And it wasn't even like Millwall didn't really get that sympathetic, got some sympathetic applause, but that is going to haunt them. It's going to haunt them.
All the romance is obviously about Luton in the playoffs. I
was just going to say that, yeah.
Even there was an article on the BBC, can Kenilworth Road be a Premier League ground when this is its entrance? Even though I'm fairly sure Queen's Park Rangers is pretty much right in the middle of a housing estate as well. But on Monday I'm watching it going, is the Premier League ready for Millwall?
Well, if you'd ended up with Luton, Coventry, Millwall and Middlesbrough, you have a sort of it's a 90s, it's a 19... I mean, Luton haven't even been in the Premier League, since its inception, have they? Or, Luton and Millwall haven't been about for a long time. Anyway, I'm trying to think about that. I mean, Middlesbrough, okay, they've been and gone. And Coventry just brings you back to, Highfield Road and Robbie Keane and...
Even
all of that,
it's a remarkable story, Coventry's revival, because it's just been such a dead club for so many years. In the sense that they were always on the verge of going out of business, and
there actually is. I think either way. I mean, Sunderland have snuck in, and they were very good. I probably ended up watching a bit of that Preston Sunderland game in the first half more so because Tom Cannon was playing and Parrott, and Sunderland were good though. They were really good, and they're that momentum team. And I suppose that's a great story too. Although I feel like the better story would still be Luton, but Sunderland would be pretty good as well. But a lot going on, it's it was a good weekend of football. Long live the king and all of that.
You're obviously looking at this with Irish eyes on it and saying it's disappointing in several ways, because all of these players are now finished football until Ireland play Greece on the 16th of June over in Athens in God knows what temperature, which is 5 weeks away still.
Yeah.
So they do have a mini camp for a few days.
Yeah.
They're all gone on their holidays. Check out their Instagram. They're all away on their holidays. They come back for a few days. Then they'll be able to go on holidays again, go to a warm weather camp in Turkey, and then head to Greece.
Yeah.
And play Gibraltar after that. So their season, even though they feel like it's finished on the 6th, 7th of May, isn't going to be finished until June 20th.
It's weird. It's basically like it's in the middle of their pre-season. It's like sort of waking up during the night and doing something for some of them, sort of athletically. And that's the problem. Like in Armenia last year, like Ireland were really poor, you know. And it's a bit like, sorry, apart from Evan Ferguson, of course, he's just Evan can keep doing his thing.
Well, I was listening to OTB AM this morning, and I think you'll find Evan Ferguson's doing just fine. Erling Haaland may want to think about working on his game outside of the penalty area. Yeah, he's doing fine with the 51 goals inside the penalty area, but what's he doing outside compared to what Evan Ferguson is doing?
If you heard that Johnny Ward has spoken about Evan Ferguson, you just don't know what's. You try sitting next to him on a Saturday when Evan Ferguson's on the team.
That's why I left.
Yeah, I mean,
I knew this was coming.
If you knew that, if you knew Ferguson was coming along, it's tough. It's tough going. It's like sitting next to one of the Eurovision contestants when the votes are coming through. You know, just like very nervous all the time. Except Johnny's probably, less eccentric. But yeah, I mean, it is true. Like, I mean, Ireland were so flat, and I think Stephen Kenny made a big mistake for the Armenia game last year. Probably would admit it, you know, picking his team on the form, on the basis of who'd done very well, because Ireland had a bit of momentum going into that and had played well in the March and the previous windows, and a couple of players like Robinson and Ogbene, even Hendrick, but they were some of the players who'd played the least football when they got there. And I don't know, I mean, they are trying to address it. I think they're going to play a bounce game in Turkey, and they'll have that mini camp. Is it different that it's very distinctively the big game of the window, like that 4-game window last year? Maybe mentally you look at Armenia away, and then there's Ukraine and Scotland, and I mean within 5-6 days Ireland were playing brilliantly against Scotland, right? So, you know, the argument in some way is that you get the cobwebs out of the system in this bounce game, you know, and take it as seriously as you possibly can. But it is a concern.
That is a criticism of Kenny as well, that in a way you can't be learning those lessons after the fact.
Yeah, I know that was a problem.
Need to be ready, and that has cropped up earlier in previous campaigns with the likes of Callum Robinson coming in and being able to play well in the first game, but actually 2 games in 4 days was just too much for him.
Yeah.
So you hope that all those lessons have been fully learnt by now.
Yeah, like, and you would hope that, like, I suppose the flip side is, yes, I suppose you can over talk about this stuff, you know. You can, like, you don't want it to become like a negative self-fulfilling prophecy, like, you know, like this dominates a bit like the Heat. And I think the game's 9:45 Athens time, so like you'd hope that it's not going to be as stifling, although it's still going to be warm. But there comes a point where it's like, okay, you know, Greece probably do have more players in leagues that are going to run a little bit later, but you just have to sort of get on with it and make sure then you do the most intensive week, 10 days you possibly do in Turkey, because, you know, everyone starts the season, you know, with no games under the belt. Like, you know, your preparation will ultimately will be judged by how you perform, and you can't have a ready-made excuse there just in case. And like the thing is, like Ireland actually in a lot of these windows, when they've had a focus to a really big game, they've generally done okay in that game. It's been the second game after that's killed them. And
the 10 minutes left in Gibraltar, and it's still 0-0.
Yeah, and I think you'd imagine that won't be an issue this time. But it's true. I mean, like, who's going to play much football between now and then? I mean, if Wolves are safe, does Nathan Collins get a few more minutes? You know, does Bazunu come back in if Southampton are gone down? Aside from that, we're struggling really, aren't we? Mikey Johnston over in Portugal, their season runs a little bit later, but you know, the playoff isn't holding a huge amount. Daryl Horgan may be involved. Beyond that, we're not sort of, everyone's in the same boat.
If only there was another league that was ongoing right now that Stephen Kenny could choose from, where the players are going to be playing right up to that game. Here's one. Jack Byrne is playing better now than he was playing when he was in the Ireland squad previously.
Well, listen, you speak as a Tala regular, but I mean, it is true. He's playing exceptionally well at the moment, Jack Byrne. He's playing. He looks back to himself. He looks back to 2020. Jack Byrne, the COVID year, he was very good. It was just, you know, like, obviously we weren't at games for the second half of that. playing against AC Milan and very, very confident. And yeah, I think the problem is, I mean, I'd love to see that happen, but I feel like, Kenny has a settled enough team that, as much as I say you have to pick players, like, don't make the mistakes of last time by leaning on your best 11 from the previous window. The problem is someone like Jack coming in. It's an adjustment to the system, to like where he actually plays. But
now is the time. Now is for those exact reasons that, again, if you do find half an hour left in Greece, there is that bit of fatigue creeping into this side, that the match sharpness isn't there. Here's somebody who can change a game anyways, who is exactly what you want and is going to be on it. Yeah,
I mean, I see the argument for it. I feel like it won't happen. I do feel like it won't happen. I feel like it's a long shot.
Do you feel it won't happen in the way that it's not going to happen from again?
No, I wouldn't say that, actually. No, I think he's made a compelling case this year. I don't think Jack was anywhere near himself last year. He probably said it himself, and he couldn't make the argument for him. And I mean, Neil Ferrugia was the player that was closer to the plans, and Mace, like, Ferrugia could still end up in the squad. Like, there's a couple of injury issues here in certain positions, like particularly in the wing back department. So it's not a million that Neil Ferrugia is included in this in some shape or form. Whereas I suppose, in Jack Byrne's position, someone like Will Smallbone has come along, and yes, he's not going to be match sharp, but it feels like Smallbone is going to be that creative option ahead of him. But I mean, he's put up. Some people will vehemently disagree, but I think you have to look at your eyes and see the level he's playing at the moment. It's good, and you wouldn't have any fear about throwing him in. I just feel like it's unlikely now. I mean, he could have a game against Gibraltar a couple of days later where it's like, okay, but. Kenny did play Jack Byrne previously, and it sort of went okay. I've never been 100% convinced that he's like 100% Kenny's type of player, which sounds mad because you associate Kenny with like really good football and that's his style. But I don't know. I feel like Kenny was always maybe more of a McElhenney man than a Jack Byrne man in some respects, in that sort of central attacking position. But I could be talking absolute rubbish. Like, it's true what you say. Like, if you have a lot of concerns about the well-being of other players, maybe someone who's playing well all the way up to the window has a chance.
So let's go through the situation with some of the Irish players right now and what will happen over the course of the summer as well. We've spent so long talking about the riches that we have at our disposal in goal right now, and none of them are playing any football at all, with Gavin Bazunu having been dropped. He's been talking this week about being dropped from Southampton over the last couple of weeks. Here's what he had to say.
We've got a very young squad, which can make it difficult. A lot of players playing at this level for the first time, including myself.
You hear this?
We've come on the wrong side of results at times, like you mentioned with Forest and with Arsenal, having really good performances and just not picking up the points we needed. Football is full of disappointments, and the ones at the top are the ones who've experienced that disappointment of being able to fight back and, get up off the ground after they've been knocked down. And I think that's what this season has constantly been. It's been about learning how to get back up, about learning how to be resilient, to bounce back after defeat, after poor performances, and somehow keep that level of confidence. And I think for me, that's probably the biggest thing I've learned this season, is that no matter what happens, you've always got a next game, and you've got to just continue to fight and work towards that.
Yeah, so Gavin Bazunu there talking about just having to, learn about having a bit of resilience, that when you're knocked down, and Southampton have been knocked down again and again and again, that maybe it's been lingering with him too long, the disappointments, and that to be at the very top you got to bounce back quickly, forget about the last game. It's no coincidence that the two youngest goalkeepers in the league, Gavin Bazunu and Ilya Meslier, have both been dropped at the end of the season. Like, they are far below the average age of a Premier League goalkeeper. How do you reflect on the season for Bazunu?
I don't know, yeah. I'm almost surprised he's put up to do something. Weirdly, even that says something about sort of people have a trust for his character. He hasn't gone into his shell, and the fact he hasn't been played, or you keep him away from the limelight. I don't know, it's it is disappointing. I spoke to him before the start of the season, did a long piece with him, and I think one of the formative experiences that he had was at Rochdale a couple of years ago. It was a similar season. We were down the bottom of the table with a team, who conceded a load of goals, and yet his reputation sort of wasn't damaged by it. felt like he came back even stronger from it, and like that must have been tough even at that level, albeit I think it was a bit of lockdown stuff, but still conceding 3-4 goals regularly enough. And I suppose maybe in the Premier League, like, he's had a similar year, but it's obviously in a much more unforgiving environment where, like, every mistake, every goal, was clipped. There's Jamie Carragher's talking about you or whatever. And it's true, like, Alex McCarthy has gone in and the results have been similar. And I know that the stats aren't great, and, like, expected saves.
He has definitely looked uncertain. Watching him in the game against Arsenal, where Arsenal had the comeback, and there was maybe a goalkeeping error where he palms the ball out from the initial shot right in front of the Arsenal forward. But even in that game, there were 2 or 3 occasions where he came out of his penalty area and there was confusion between him and the centre back, and everything you would expect to see from a club that's bottom of the Premier League table.
Yeah, it's funny. I think there's almost parallels with Nathan Collins in a way, that both of them, like, Nathan Collins has made, like, bad mistakes this year, but then you could watch him in a 90-minute game and he can be excellent, but then he's involved in, like, a bad moment,
Well, even the last game that he came on when they got absolutely hammered, and you're going, well, surely Nathan Collins should be getting on, and the first thing he does is give the ball.
He has a moment, but then I remember speaking, like, I think it was David Snade was over watching him against Man City, and, like, apparently he was excellent, but then he's involved in flashpoint moments. And, like, Bazunu, like, he came in, like, Bazunu came in and played against France. And you, I don't know about you, but you'd be watching that and you'd be thinking, like, you've full trust in him, quite commanding. And he had some great games for Southampton this year, like away at Chelsea and away at Manchester United, and, like, in these environments where you're thinking, he is one of these keepers that he comes off his line a lot and he'll take a risk, and then if that goes wrong, it looks dreadful. But generally, he still played with a degree of confidence. But in saying that, at other times he's just conceded some bad goals as well. And even it's not even so much. I know what you're talking about, those little communication moments, just 1 or 2. Even just his general shot stopping hasn't been terrific.
That's what Jamie Carragher's point was, when you look at the expected goals, that if Southampton were where they should be with expected goals, they would be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Like, they would be surviving. Whereas...
Yeah, and, like, I don't know. I mean, he's probably still exposed to a lot of chance. I know the stats are more, specific than that and whatever. Like, can it be a glitch, or is that reflective of the entirety of his performances across the season? Like, I can see he still looks like the all-round modern goalkeeper, but maybe at times it's just 1 or 2 of the basics have let him down. Like, I think sometimes, like, the analysis of goalkeepers, like, you need to be really on point with it, and even there would be goalkeepers who would be annoyed by Jamie Carragher's analysis and would say, well, you don't really
the
get
week
it,
before obviously on Monday Night Football, Kasper Schmeichel is on and is earning rave reviews from every goalkeeper online to have, finally one of our guys is out there explaining exactly what's going on in this scenario. XG, as you say, is a very advanced piece of technology and statistics that is reflective, but doesn't necessarily reflect where Southampton are as a team and as a club right now, where, like, they've made a decision to go with a lot of youth and it's backfired badly.
Yeah, and, like, I suppose, like, to go with a young goalkeeper is a big statement, but look, I'm very conscious, like, the green tinted glasses here of just, like, taking a favourable view just because of it. But you do watch McCarthy. I watched the game against Forest again on Monday, and, like, they give you chances, and again, you'd look at it and go, he conceded a bit like a lot of the games, 3 or 4. Was he at fault for any of the goals? Not really, no. Could he have done better?
Had a stronger arm on one of them.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's been a lot of it with Bazunu, though. Like, he's exposed maybe to, like, he's busy in games, and I suppose he's just, like, at times that's just, he's just let silly ones in. Was it Leeds, or I can't think there was.
Well, there was the one where Carragher was on commentary as well, where he made what looked like a great save initially, but he punched it straight up into the air and the ball comes down and the opposition score.
Yeah, I suppose the bigger thing is, so what happens now? What happens, like, from here? Like, he is still unbelievably young. Like, and he's played a lot of football. Like, he's played a lot of football for his age. He's about 21. He's still an asset. He's still, like, a great sort of profile, because I think he has a lot of the attributes to be a modern goalkeeper. But maybe he does, like, I spoke to someone a while back involved in the game who was of the view that, a confidence boosting year in the Championship would be no harm. Like, he went from that year at Rochdale to suddenly going to Portsmouth. So you're suddenly playing for a team that was challenging for promotion. So just naturally the energy is a little bit different. You're at the top end of the table. Your team are dominating some games, some weeks, as opposed to being under the cosh almost every week. It must have felt like at times this year. And maybe if he goes then with them and plays a full year in the Championship, is it a bad thing?
Well, with the exception of Evan Ferguson again, I think what this season has proven is that all of these young players are very much at the mercy of modern football. That we look at them making the breakthrough and then start talking about how many years will Nathan Collins spend at Wolves before maybe he goes to one of the top 6 teams. But managers change, and everything you hear out of Wolves and Lopetegui is that he's an incredible manager. His organisation, tactically, he's way ahead of even what was there with Nuno. But he clearly sees something in Nathan Collins that he's not quite sure about. Or maybe it was just at the time they were in trouble and Craig Dawson is brought in, solid Premier League defender, years of experience, and he goes, actually, Nathan Collins I'll come back to in time. And that's the risk with Gavin Bazunu is we're all looking at it now again going, a year in the Championship where Southampton will be one of the better teams, good confidence boosting year. Southampton will have a new manager in the summer and we have no idea what that manager is going to think.
It's true, but it does seem like every manager and goalkeeping coach that works with Bazunu comes round to him, and it's true. You could have someone with a completely different set of opinions, but he seems like one of these training ground players that really impresses. Like, he came into the Ireland squad and he got that sense that everyone straight away was like, yes. And it feels like he's one of those that maybe he hasn't brought to the pitch, maybe at times this year, what he's showing people on the training ground, because so many of them, like 3 different managers did stick with him until eventually you're trying to roll the dice in the last
Well, and that's
couple
what this felt like. It didn't feel like a dropping necessarily. It was, need to change something.
No, it would have been so easy to drop him earlier. So I think he shows a lot behind the scenes that convinces people. So I wouldn't be as worried about that with him. I mean, the Collins one is fascinating because, I mean, he I suppose you saw little signs even with Ireland last year. Just again, the concentration at times lets him down. But I feel about Lopetegui, like, again, I think it's a little bit of that. It's like he was firefighting, left-right balance. It was Collins and Kilman. He wanted to go with a sort of the balance with Dawson and Kilman maybe suited at that time. But a full pre-season with Collins, we might have a different scenario there.
I do need to take a quick break. We'll have 2 live games on Off the Ball for you on Sunday afternoon. 2 massive games as well. Everton against Manchester City is first up at 2 o'clock at Goodison Park. Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr will bring you through that one. And then it's Arsenal against Evan Ferguson at 4:30. We'll be doing a full comparison between Haaland and Ferguson as the afternoon goes on.
Oh God, yeah, just get Johnny in for that.
Myself and Kenny Cunningham will talk you through Arsenal Brighton. So 2 cracking games on Sunday afternoon. We're going to talk about some more of the Irish players and what's going to happen to them over the course of summer right after these. All our football and Off the Ball is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, watch every single live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk. Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, watch every single live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.
Welcome back. It is Thursday's football show. Nathan and Dan with you this evening. So we've been talking about some of the Irish players, and when the stats come out over the next couple of weeks, they won't make for pretty reading around the amount of minutes Irish players have played in the Premier League this season. We had that statistic a couple of weeks ago where was it for the first time ever in the Premier League, and probably when you go back it must be for the first time since records began that no Irish player started in a round of top flight fixtures in the English League. There are going to be players coming up next season as well as players going down. Some players who will be making moves. James McClean, there has been some speculation about a potential move back to Derry. it feels a bit premature for where he is in his career, and that he's, by all accounts, had an excellent season personally for Wigan, although it's been a real struggle for the club.
Yeah, I wouldn't be expecting that to happen this time. I think the plan there has always been to maybe, and like his contract is up at Wigan. I'm not saying for certain he doesn't go back there, but I mean the players weren't being paid there in the last week, and it just seems a little bit fraught behind the scenes at the club. So I think the plan there has always been to maybe play. I say overseas. I mean, he is overseas already, of course, but to maybe go to sunnier climes or something different, and then come back to Derry. Now, I mean, if nothing materialises that fits the bill, who knows? That could happen earlier. But I think I wouldn't be expecting him to pitch up at Derry soon, unless there's been a dramatic change of plan. He's just turned 34, letting himself go. Like, looking at him over there on holidays, feet up on the beach. Come on, James. Bit of professionalism in the gym, yeah. Straight off the flight. He hasn't been on the show in quite a while, but I do want to talk to him about his training regime, which to me feels absolutely insane. He's there on a Saturday night. He's just played for Wigan, and he's in the gym at midnight. He's going to play till he's 40. That's why I was surprised when I saw the links with Derry. You're thinking you've got another couple of years at a higher level, and it's not as if even if he came back at 37 to Derry, he's going to be like any normal 37-year-old. No, like he can. There's no doubt. Like unless he just gets bad luck with injury, and I don't know, he's one of those that's probably like you'd imagine at times. Well, there's no doubt about it. Like a couple of times to play for Ireland, he's come back earlier than his club would have wanted and stuff. And the only thing that would hold him back is if he's played through the pain barrier too much to a point where it catches up with him. But you just can't. You can't see that, And I think the Derry thing has always been an attraction. And I think there'll always be room for him there, I think. And more to the point, like Wigan had an absolute nightmare of a season, but again, like judging fan reaction, I don't think there's any sense that people feel his performance levels were a factor in that. He was involved pretty much when he was fit in what seems like has been a pretty challenging season, and he's still doing it at championship level, and so we haven't had a vintage year for Irish players at championship level this year. So the fact he's done that, he's obviously pretty very motivated. I mean, he's fit at all times, but I mean, he could be the 100 cap man against Gibraltar. He's on what, 98? He's 98. So I mean, you'd imagine just the issue there is being involved in the Greece game, which wouldn't be 100% certain, I suppose, but he's definitely one that he's going to turn up in top shape. I think that was an issue last year with some other potential options didn't necessarily arrive back in great shape. There's going to be no concerns about McClean on that front, and I would have thought actually, even I'm not sure what the situation is with Coleman, but in terms of sort of leadership and presence and experience, like he's probably there's a strong case for him there. But yeah, like where does he go? It may well be that he sort of tries sort of somewhere further afield. But I can see him, I think his story's got a fair bit to run. You mentioned not a vintage year for Irish players in the Championship, so it hasn't been a vintage year obviously in the Premier League, which is quite concerning that it hasn't been a vintage year in the Championship either. We've seen an awful lot of players go from the League of Ireland across to lower league Championship, League One over the last 18 months or so. Any of those players making enough progress over the past 12 months that they're going to step up a level over the summer? Jump up, I'm not sure. I suppose I should say about the Championship, I mean, we did have Josh Cullen and John Egan, to be fair, like, two staples of the Irish team who have gone up, and you'd imagine they'll play more next year, which is good for our stats. But yeah, like, we had that sort of massive exodus, all right, which would have been discussed here a lot about the players going to League One. I was just looking at it today just for a newsletter piece, going through them all. Yeah, I feel like a lot of them are doing quite well without necessarily being on the verge of like some massive jump in their career, and maybe there's no shame in that. Like they've gone to become very solid League One players in some cases. Andy Lyons went and played regularly in the Championship, but they're a club that's relegated. You'd assume he'll go down and play with them regularly in League One. I think some of them have done pretty well. Danny Mandrew, Lincoln has done well. Promise O'Mashare at Fleetwood. Owen Toll, who went from Derry to Bolton, done absolutely fine, until he got injured. Aidan Keena, he went over again to Cheltenham. I mean, he was, not exactly the most glamorous. I mean, he scored 6 goals in the last 10 games, the season. That's worked out pretty well for him. Someone whose career was very uncertain when he came back home. So there is stories like that. but they're not necessarily players who've like who you're saying, okay, they're on the fast track to the championship here. Now maybe the likes of Andrew and Promise O'Mashare and stuff will get there eventually, but it doesn't feel like it's massively imminent. And a couple have been. Dawson Devoy has gone down with MK Dons. Looked like a great move. Dara Burns, I thought he'd do as well as any of them, and he's been a real disappointment at MK Dons. So it's tough. It's a good level to go into and figure out. And I think a lot of them have gone in there and have done absolutely fine. And it's a great place to make a good career. It's not necessarily when you have someone like Gavin Ferguson doing what it is. Everything looks.
You're a little bit off Broadway.
Everything looks off Broadway compared to that. But in of itself, like, it's an achievement. I mean, we were talking about this briefly off air. Like, what is the definition of making it for people anymore? Like, if someone who goes to League One and plays there for 5, 6, 7 seasons, like, that's a really good career. Because the game over there at the moment, I know Brexit has made it maybe a little bit less competitive lower down the leagues in terms of overseas players, but it's still a brutal environment to try and make a living in. And the ones that survive are doing very well.
I probably felt that at the time as well last year, that when this exodus was happening, because a lot of them were young players, there's almost, again, too much expectation going over that this was just a stepping stone to greater things again, where I think, as you rightly point out, actually just staying at that lower championship, top of League One level, like, is still the 0.0001%.
Oh yeah. Like, you look at someone like Daryl Horgan's been released now by Wickham, and I don't know where he'll pitch up next. I'd imagine clubs here might be wondering what might happen. But to me, like, Daryl Horgan, okay, yeah, he didn't go over and like, you know, he didn't play in the Premier League, but he's probably gone over. He's played in the Championship with Preston, played in Scotland with Hibs, been involved with Wickham in the Championship and League One. Okay, the last year hasn't been great. He's played for his country, double figure number of times, I think. That's good. Like, that's a good innings, you know, for someone. And maybe our definition of, like, as I said, like, maybe in the context of maybe where Irish players played 15, 20 years ago, and the fact that, you know, you could list, like, you know, Irish players in the Premier League sort of falling off the page, that maybe there's a lack of respect for, like, actually carving out a career in those divisions, you know, below, as you said, a little bit off Broadway. And, like, you have the likes of Sean Williams and Pádraig Hammond and people who've been on this show at times who've, like, actually done extremely well to survive in the game. And I feel like a lot of the ones now that are going from the league are going over a little bit later. They're a little bit more mature. They've got a better chance of lasting the course over there for a long period of time, as opposed to maybe before, when all the players going over were 16, 17. Very naturally, some of them will be back in no time.
Who's the one right now then? Ferrugia? Is he next?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think Ferrugia will definitely get a move. Yeah, I'm not sure to where, but I think he ticks a lot of the attributes for people physically, and he's got a great profile. Like, strikers will always have a chance, and they'll always sort of attract interest and attention. But I feel like Ferrugia is the obvious one because he hasn't been away before. I think there'll be a lot of people willing to take a chance on him. There's probably others around the league. Again, like, there's some very good young players in the league who are a little bit different because they're in the pre-Brexit age, like the Sam Curtis, Adam Murphy, Benny and Whitmarsh in Cork. There's a lot of good players in the league at the moment who will get moves, but I think obviously Ferrugia is slightly older, so can go somewhere and start playing very quickly.
Virgin Media announced yesterday they're going to show more live games.
Yeah, it's. I was looking at it now that I know TV coverage and rights and so on is a very topical subject this week on the island generally.
Tell you what, the £7 for LOI TV is a bargain.
No, it's just like, I mean, people are concerned about the cost of watching games. You spend a lot of money if you wanted to watch League of Ireland team last year. Although, I mean, the LOI TV is great value in my view now. You get season pass, but I was looking at it. Yeah, I mean, there's the round of fixtures. This week's round of games. It's the last weekend where there's no live televised game, I think, until the end of June. I think that every round of fixtures between now and then there's a game on TV between the two channels. That's what adding a second channel to the mix does it. And then into June you're into European time where hopefully games will be shown. So I'm conscious the Rugby World Cup is later in the year. Like, does that impact? There seems to be more games being shown in the summer now generally, but I think it's good. I think apparently the Virgin reaction was decent, and yeah, I think there's a decent buzz around it at the moment, and if you can increase familiarity for the sort of floating fan with some of these teams and players, it's why not? You know, I'm a little bit biased because I'm going along every week and enjoying it. I know you go to Tala and you enjoy it. It's not for everyone, but it feels like this year you're selling something that you can believe in it. You know, that it's getting better, and the drive is probably there to make it even better, because obviously not every ground looks as good on TV as some of them do.
Did you see the Alfinga Haaland story? This is great stuff.
So he was chucked out of.
He was escorted from his seat at the Bernabeu because Real Madrid were not happy with his celebration following De Bruyne's goal. The video on social media appeared to show him cupping his ears towards the home fans before being removed from the VIP box. Haaland seniors also denied that he had thrown peanuts at Real Madrid fans. I did not true. We had some good banter with Madrid fans. We had to move 50 metres away, nothing more.
Yeah, I saw the Peanuts headline, all right. It does sort of grab your attention. But Alfinga's having a great life.
Well, this is like, if this is the worst Alfinga does.
It's a great second life in football, isn't it?
Oh.
You know, like we need to see
You're there in the best box in the Etihad every week. Feet up. Your son is the star of the show.
A lot of pressure on Barry Ferguson to live up to this now.
Yeah. Come on, Barry.
Johnny's going to be like, you think Alfinga, you know, wait to see Barry.
Oh, Barry celebrations.
But I do like that.
I'm pretty sure Barry hadn't been over to about his first 4 or 5 matches, because obviously he works in football over here.
Yeah.
So all his work is at weekends as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's been over much at all, actually. But it's a great second life, though, isn't it? Like Alfinga, I think you're talking about making it. Like, he had a great career. Like, you know, by any sort of measure of it, and yet you watch your son do this, and now you can just, you know, the footballer's life, but you're in the VIP box. He's been involved in a couple of little scrapes now, hasn't he? He's had a couple of maybe the cameras are always following him as well too, so maybe this is just how player parents behave a lot of the time.
But I was just thinking that you don't really hear about player parents.
Well, wasn't there stuff about France during the last Euro 2020? Wasn't there stuff to do with Rabiot's family? And there was definitely. I don't want to take a punt and guess who the issue was with, but there was definitely like, there was
Arthur's nodding along. Frantically.
It was Rabiot and a couple of other high profile players, and the parents or siblings were having issues in the stand there in one of the games.
Adrien Rabiot's mother clashed with Paul Pogba's family.
I was thinking
after France crashed out of Euro 2020
to Switzerland. Yeah, but I suppose if you think about it, like people talk about sideline behaviour of parents at underage football generally.
Would make sense.
Like it's natural extension that extends, just that not everyone recognises the parents.
Veronica Rabiot was involved in a heated exchange with Pogba and Mbappe's families immediately after the final whistle. Veronique was said to have initially lost her rag after Switzerland's 90th minute equaliser, angrily questioning how Pogba lost the ball in the build-up to the goal, which I guess is what any supporter would do. After the final whistle, she then reportedly took aim at Mbappe's parents, telling the PSG hitman's dad, I'm reading this directly from the website, to make him less arrogant. Veronique, who had previously acted as Rabiot's agent, which was also an issue, wasn't it, when he was Manchester United were interested in signing
like this was a
him, that they didn't particularly want to deal with his mother. She also allegedly slammed Mbappe's attitude to journalists present in the mix zone. Well, now I'm starting to get on board with her. Finally, someone who wants a little bit of respect for the journalists in the mix zone.
Yeah, I mean, so it can happen. You know, this is the new genre. Like because you know, people say there's no characters in the game anymore. You know, players live a very sanitized existence in their own way. Just got their folks on board.
Whereas the parents are free to do whatever the hell they want.
This is the life.
They're there in the VIP lounge. The drinks are flown for 2 hours before the game. This is
see what happens. You know,
living the dream.
Get the peanuts flying. But I think now. That is just like, it's, do they know themselves? Like he was exposed to certain things in his football career, probably made reasonable money. So you understand the game and you understand the mentality of the footballer, and yet you just see like your offspring just go to this otherworldly level. You just have to go along and enjoy the ride. Speaking of
Erling Haaland and mix zones, when I was over at the Etihad for the City Arsenal game, I was in the mix zone afterwards, and David Myler, who was on co-commentary, was alongside me, and I was explaining to David what the proper etiquette for the mix zone is for professional footballers, which is you come out and you talk to the journalists.
Put your phone to the ear and walk past.
Which I think David admitted he may well have done himself on a couple of occasions. He wasn't the worst, in fairness.
I never forget the Irish player who did that and his phone rang. That was spectacular.
A thing of beauty. But Erling Haaland was walking out, and Myler was like, go on, ask him to stop. And he had, I think, 3 security people with him. And we were thinking, like, there's nobody from Manchester City that can get Erling Haaland to stop in the mix zone. Like,
No.
You were talking about the biggest star in world football right now. No press officer can go, actually, we've said you'll stop and chat to these journalists here. And no, like they have nothing to come back with.
It's mad because, like, I was over in Molde for the Shamrock Rovers game in October, and that's where he played his football recently. And like his existence was as far away from that as possible. I spoke to some people over there, like they were used to seeing Haaland just walk up and down the street. You know, what he was playing for the local team, and like the chef in Molde is still the same chef from that time. But like I was the receptionist in the hotel. I was like, oh yeah, Haaland, yeah. Should we just see him walking by every day? And the players in Molde just all walk around this tiny place. And you know, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was in the area at the time, and Haaland would have had no minders, no frills, no. And then you just go to this level now where...
Well, maybe I'm underestimating him, and he would love to stop and chat, and actually they're just not letting him.
A lot of them, well, I would say that a lot of the sort of Nordic, Scandinavian players are unbelievably relaxed when it comes to the media stuff. Completely.
I was explaining that to Myler when we were coming out. I was saying, I can guarantee you that Manuel Akanji will stop and talk. And likewise, if you go to Liverpool, Virgil van Dijk will always stop and talk to every single journalist, because when they're in their formative years at their first clubs in the Netherlands or in Switzerland, every player has to talk all of the time. And when they're with their national side, still, they have to come out and talk all of the time. So it's what they expect.
Yeah, no. I think sometimes the clubs in this part of the world put the shield around them because it's assumed that's what you do. But you'll often find, like, Denmark, the national team, I remember you could go into the hotel and speak to anyone. I remember playing Norway years ago, Ireland playing Norway. Like, you just go into the team hotel before the game. Anna Reese is just there on the...
Myself and Thomas Delaney were like that by the time Ireland had finished playing them for about...
We hadn't played them in weeks.
In 2 years.
Well, they are totally relaxed, and it's never harmed them.
Arthur's given that look of the last thing in the world radio listeners like to care
self-serving media crap, yeah.
In mix zones, and you deserve to be ignored.
Yeah, listen, I'd ignore you.
Well, exactly.
To be clear, I'd expect that,
It's when we ignore the players, that's when the power shifting, like, nah, I don't want to talk to him.
What was the story about the English team years ago where the English press were like mocking the third choice goalkeeper going through the mix zone when relations were at absolute rock bottom? That the English players walking through the mix zone were being mocked by the media. I think those days are gone now.
On that note, we've run out of road, as Arthur would say.
We're done.
Thanks a lot for coming in, Dan. All our football and off the ball is brought to you by Sky. All the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sport. A reminder, we've got 2 brilliant games live for you on Sundays off the ball. Everton, Manchester City, Arsenal against Brighton. You back in Saturday?
I am.
Back in Saturday. Johnny Ward will be here. You're going to try and
Brighton are playing on Sunday.
Well, you'll be talking about it. They're playing Arsenal. Rein them back in just that little bit. And John will be here as well with all the scores from all the Saturday games.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, watch every single live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
This is News Talk.